Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. So, in many instances, the creepiest and most terrifying accounts that I receive are experienced by drivers and passengers on the highways and byways. Um, these can be sightings of cryptids, unknown anomalies, or any unexplained event. Now, I've collected several interesting as well as mind bending reports that are sure to pique the listener's imagination and maybe stir a sense of trepidation. So just sit back and imagine how you would respond to any of these situations. Maybe that they'll remind you of a sighting or an encounter that you have once had in the past. So, that being said, let's get started.
We live in a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
So, before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. If you're watching on YouTube, Super Chat and Super Danks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box, and the Buy Me a Coffee and other donation links are also shown in the description. So, thanks for your consideration. Your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you find interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to again thank my chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, for their commitment to me and the channel. As well, I want to acknowledge Christina and Kevin at Elevate Souls Production. So now, if you're in the chat and have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one of them after the presentation. So this account was submitted by a reader that has all the trappings of an episode of the X Files. They tell me, Lon, hi Lon, I really enjoy your Phantoms Monsters website, especially Lycan and Dogman encounters and Black Eyed Kid reports. I just wanted to relate a strange tale that happened to me and my brother-in-law. Now, if you decide to print the story, please do not use my real name. It is also worth mentioning that I have experienced an unusual number of paranormal events in my life. Some of these events were very frightening. I'm now 52 years old, and these events happen much less frequently, which I consider a blessing. Usually, just small things happen now, like the occasional street light turning off as I approach. Now, in this story, I'm not using my brother in law's real name, so I'll just call him Jack. Please feel free to contact me with any questions, although this event occurred over 20 years ago and the details are a bit fuzzy. So, this took place in November, sometime in the early 1990s. I had spent a few days alone hunting deer out at the family cabin located just south of Springville, New York. At the time, I did not own a vehicle capable of traversing the snow-covered dirt road which led to the cabin. Now, my brother-in-law Jack owned a large 4x4 pickup. He and my sister lived in the area, so we were going to swing by the cabin and pick me up. Now, he worked in Buffalo as a diesel mechanic and was going to drop me off at my parents' house nearby. It was about 5 a.m., and we were driving north on US Route 219. The road was dark, and we seemed to be the only vehicle in sight. Now, after a while, we could see the faint light of another vehicle in front of us. As we approached, we realized the vehicle was pulled off on the side of the road. Now, I can't remember if the car's lights were on, but there was a strange orange glow flickering from within the vehicle. Now, at first, I thought the car was on fire. We slowed down to see if we could be of help. Now, I remember slowing down to a crawl, but says we pulled over and says to pull over and stop. We remained in our vehicle. Now, we could not see anyone in or near the car. Now, this was the early 90s, and neither of us had a cell phones, or else we would have called 911. Now, we were not sure what to do. We discussed approaching the car, but I hesitated. After a few seconds, I got a bad feeling about this. The orange light did not have the random flicker of a flame, or did the light have a regular blinking of an emergency lantern or flashlight? This light seemed to have a weird pulsating to it. I convinced Jack to pull away and keep driving. We would pay attention to the news and see if there was any mention of this vehicle or any crime associated with the vehicle. It never made the news, and we went on with our lives. Now, this tale starts to get strange as 2 or 3 months later, Jack tells me that he was on his regular early morning commute when his truck was stopped by a roadblock on 219. An officer who was dressed like a detective asked him if he witnessed a car pulled over a couple months back. Now, the officer described the vehicle we had seen, and Jack quickly related to the officer our encounter with this vehicle. Now, the officer then told him to drive on. It seems odd that the officer didn't ask him to pull over or try to get further details. Isn't that the whole point of a roadblock? You finally get a witness and then you let them drive away. Well, this story should end there, but an even stranger detail had recently emerged. Now, not long ago, I was talking to Jack, and our encounter with this vehicle came up. We were trying to remember the details, and our accounts differ slightly. I remember the vehicle's driver door being open. He remembers it being closed. Then he talked about him being stopped by the roadblock and wondered why the detective was wearing crazy plaid pants. Now, this is a detail he left out the first time he told me this part of the tale. Apparently, the officer detective was wearing loud plaid pants. I know in the 1950s and 60s, golfers and hunters wore plaid pants. Like I said earlier, the roadblock occurred a couple months after we encountered a strange vehicle and hunting season was over. We just can't imagine why this officer would be wearing plaid pants. Is it an interrogation technique needed to distract the person you're questioning? Now, I would not even bother relating this tale, but I think the plaid pants aspect really brings this counter into the realm of the high strange. What was happening inside the car? Did we just miss or interrupt some sort of abduction event? For the record, Jack is a skeptic. He considers this even to be very odd, but not paranormal in nature. He has never had any interest in the paranormal. I, however, have had many brushes with the paranormal and have become quite sensitive to these matters. I hope there is something here you find of value in your research. It's a strange story, but I wish I knew what happened myself. So this next account, a couple are driving at night in northern New Mexico when they encounter a transparent black entity standing on the road. The witness states that he had no idea what this being was. So he tells me, "Hey, Lon, back in the fall of 2020 during the pandemic, I was driving and I had a girl I was dating with me. I was picking her up from her house. It was nighttime. This was in northern New Mexico, so there's like a hotbed of creatures and other strange stuff there as well. So we're driving down the road, and you know how sometimes a deer will jump out in front of the car. Well, I saw what I thought was a deer or something coming from the side of the road. I would never even think this would happen, but it jumped in front of the car and I hit the brakes. And it's nighttime, so you had the headlights on. So we both leaned forward to look at it because at first I said, "Oh, that's a deer." Then I thought it was a dog. It gets within 5 feet of the headlights and I'm almost stopped. The thing was black and transparent. The headlights went right through it. And it looked like the size of a large dog or a small bear, and the back end of it was higher than the front. The lights went through it, so it was kind of in this realm and kind of not. You could see the road, and you could tell there was where the car was like it knew we were there. I think it purposely jumped in front of the headlights, but I don't know. Now, we both saw this thing. I looked at my girlfriend, and she said, "Did you just see that?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that." Now, later, I watched the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves. It looked exactly like what they have in that movie when what they call the soldier demon. They had smaller front legs, but the back legs, when they walked on like four legs like a dog. In the movie, they had skin, but this thing that I saw was totally black, but it had a shape to it. Like it had a small head, a little head, and a larger body than the head, but back a bit, exactly like the movie. Now, that thing in the movie wasn't just someone's imagination. Those things exist. What was it doing? I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere. There were houses and people. There were houses and people around, but I just don't know. So, the next account, a pair of long haul drivers are stopped near Fortuna, Arizona, by several individuals dressed in unrecognizable gear. Then a distant light raced towards the cab. There were an hour and a half out, about an hour and a half of missing time associated with this event. Now, the witness states, "I'm a long haul driver, and I was traveling east on Interstate 8 just east of Fortuna, Arizona. This occurred in mid June 2017. Now, having checked the clock, it was 3:45 a.m. when I alerted my partner to the presence of three or four individuals standing in the middle of the traffic lane. Now, after sounding the truck horn, I began to slow our rig. Now, given the fact that the area is well known for human smuggling and is dangerous to travel, I wondered if perhaps we should just keep going. But when it became apparent that at least three of the individuals were wearing some kind of uniform, I decided to stop along the right shoulder. Nevertheless, my second driver emerged from the sleeper with the shotgun that we carried. Now, both of us agreed that neither of us was going to step from the cab, and we kept the engine idling. Three individuals walked slowly towards me, towards the driver's side of the cab. At about 15 feet, I could tell that all three of them were suited, if you will, in some sort of weird gear. I wondered if the Marines from the nearby Marine Corps Air Station crashed and were going to ask us for help. Now, as I lowered the driver's window, the shortest of the three bundled in heavy white gear with what looked like white armor around his chest and a partial faceplate that emerged from below the chin. He said to me in perfect English, "Not to worry, we have a minor situation." He or it motioned with his left arm toward the distance off the highway. It was strange because neither my partner or I saw anything as we approached the group, but sure enough, something was putting out intense red flames, maybe 50 feet off the right shoulder from where we were parked. Now, before I could say anything, a triangle shaped wedge of the landscape to our right, with the flames at the base of the triangle, rose up and sliced through the truck cab. For lack of a better description, I felt like I was looking at some kind of image as it came through the cab. I mean, the individual who spoke to me appeared first on the left side near me and then appeared on the right, then the raised side, then both sides, which appeared grazed. My throat was so dry, my stomach was in knots. Honestly, I felt like I was going to throw up. I figured we had it. Three individuals, two in white, wearing helmets, and one who appeared burned or blackened and without a helmet, appeared in the image to our right as they made their way around chunks of rock walking towards our cab. There was a lot of communication, like radio, between them or between somebody else. The one that had spoken to me after I had lowered the window now sounded metallic. So I turned once again towards the voice to my left again, opened toward the open window, and he or it wasn't there. I turned toward my partner in the right front seat, who was still cradling the shotgun, but nothing. I mean, it was black. It was perfectly silent. There were no flames off to the right in the distance. Our clock then showed 5:15 a.m. and the entire encounter felt like it only had lasted 15 minutes or so. I don't know what to claim. I stopped assisting several entities that appeared to be projecting from somewhere, and I still feel nauseous. Normally, when we get lost time like that, it's some type of abduction, but I don't know what happened in this instance. So the next witness states, I'm writing this based on what I saw going to work one morning in September 2018. I'd rather like to stay anonymous. I live on the state line of New Mexico and Texas. I left my home at 4:30 a.m. to head into work in Seminole, Texas to open at 6 o'clock a.m. The drive takes about 30 minutes. I always took Route 214 to Route 3306 all the way to the Seminole Highway. This morning will always be with me as I turned onto Route 3306, maybe a mile or so. I see a large man. So I slowed down because I thought it was odd to see a man on an electric pole so early in the morning. But as I got closer, I saw no truck or any indication that someone was servicing the electrical pole. That's when I saw a huge man crouch over with large black feathered wings extended down its back and a bony spine in between the wings with his head down to his chest. I didn't look back. Well, this is what she sent me. So I contacted the witness and they offered a bit more information. The area of the sighting was in Hobbs, New Mexico, a location with a lot of crude oil pumps. Now, the dark winged humanoid had grasped onto the electrical pole near the top. The wings were feathered and quite large. The body was membraned or bare skinned. The head was small and round with no observable features. The witness estimated that the total body length was 8 to 9 feet. Now, the witness is of Navajo heritage, and they stated that this type of winged being was described to her in the past by their grandfather. He had described it as a form taken by a skinwalker and that it was a malevolent being. The witness said that there had been large flying beings seen in the area in the past, but they feel that these other sightings were large birds or thunderbirds. The witness was very fearful of receiving ridicule by the local populace, so it's important to maintain anonymity. The location, by the way, is approximately 50 miles southeast of Roswell, New Mexico. Now, in the next account, the writer's great aunt told her about a bizarre encounter that she had while driving on Interstate 10 late at night. A driverless black car among the other, three others pulled up beside her. More strangeness ensues. So they tell me, hi, I live in Tempe, Arizona for about 9 months back in 2012. I then moved to Tucson for several months after that and lived with my grand aunt, who is now in her 70s. She's a very rational, logical person, and while she's not opposed to the existence of otherworldly things, that's not usually where her mind gravitates toward when unexplained things happen. I've asked her to tell me this story a couple times over the years. I've since moved away and don't speak to her that much, but I'll try to recount it as best I can remember. Now, I think this occurred about 15 years ago, but I can't quite remember the year. She said she had attended a concert near Scottsdale with a friend who lived there and was driving back. It was on I-10 and was the only vehicle on the highway. The stretch of road she was on was about halfway to Tucson. Even now, that drive has stretches of desolate area, and I can only imagine how much more there were many years ago. Suddenly, in the lane next to her, there were three black cars, no license plates on any of them. They came from behind her, seemingly out of nowhere. The lights were on the inside of one of the cars, and when she looked in, there was no one driving, but there was a man in one of the back passenger seats who seemed to be writing in a notebook. She only caught a glimpse as the three cars then sped up and got in front of her, and she swore she saw them drive up a ramp and into the back of an 18 wheeler that had appeared on the highway up ahead. This is also remarkably strange given how well flat it is out there. It's not like you're driving around bends and coming up and down inclines. It's flat and you can see for miles and miles. She still doesn't know where that big truck came from or how she didn't see it in front of her. Now, she recalled that the 18 wheeler then steered off to the right of the highway, off into the desert, and about a minute later, the lights in the truck went out and she could no longer see it. I'm sure I'm forgetting certain details of the story. I wish I remembered more clearly or wrote down what she told me. Either way, I've always found this fascinating little tale, and the way my old aunt says is so amusing that she speaks of it almost nonchalantly. I asked her what she thought, and she said likely the government or some corporation testing self-driving cars, which certainly seems plausible. At no point in time did she feel threatened or in danger. It was just an odd midnight drive into the desert. Now, the funny thing is, this was in Arizona, but I've had similar stories like this told to me out in the Mojave, especially just east of San Diego. So I don't, something about desert driving, I guess. But I do get a lot of weird accounts coming out of the desert at night. Now, this next account, a truck driver on a rural Arkansas highway late at night observes a man dressed in a black suit standing in the middle of the road staring into the distance. The driver freaked out and kept driving. So he tells me, I had something happen to me when I was an over the road truck driver in very rural Arkansas. I was a trainer, and at about 2 o'clock in the morning, my student woke up, came through the curtain, and sat in the other seat. I said, "What are you doing up?" And he said, "Just all of a sudden, I couldn't sleep." Right then, I looked up, and it was very rural, and there were no cars parked along the road, no houses, just a forest. And somebody standing on the white line on the freeway, on the side of the road. I clicked the cruise control off and I slowed down. I started to move over into the left lane, and there was a guy in a black suit and a black fedora hat. He was just standing there, still looking out onto the freeway. It was strange, and I've tried over the years to rationalize what it was, and I haven't been able to do so. There was just nothing around out there, nothing. The strange part was I was kind of freaked out and kind of scared about it being, but my student, he was like, maybe we should stop and see if he's okay. I said, I'm not stopping. He was insistent that we stopped, and I finally said, when we get about 2 miles down the road, I'll pull over. I'll wait about an hour. And if you're not back, I'm leaving. He kind of hushed up then. He had this crazy sense that he needed to go to this person. I felt the opposite. I just needed to get the hell out of there. It was strange. I haven't told too many people, but yeah, odd. He was looking straight off into the freeway and he didn't really move. And the only way I can describe it is how he looked, kind of like the Agent Smith of the Matrix, in the suit like that. But he had been wearing his old style fedora hat. Men in Black? I don't know. I thought maybe he was drunk at a wedding party and got lost, but there was nothing out there. There was no reason for anyone to be standing out there, especially in a suit. Now, next account, a truck driver is near Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. he notices a bipedal creature walking out of the woods and towards the road. And he tells me, back in the day when I was a younger man, I was driving a truck down in Georgia and picked up a load of mulch. I'm going down this 2-lane road and I don't remember the exact area. I remember looking at my atlas as I was driving. It was above Jacksonville, but on the Georgia side, and there was a national park there, which was Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. But as I was driving, I saw what it looked like, what I thought was a bear or something getting ready to cross the road. Now, I've been staring at the ditch line because I was looking at like a planted forest. I'd never seen, planted forest before. It was all pine trees, symmet- symmetrically lined up and everything. So I see this bear start to come out onto the road across the ditch and cross the road. So I started covering my brakes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hit a bear. And it turned to look at me. Its face was flat. It didn't have the big nose like a bear does. And I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that? It didn't look big and heavy like everyone describes it. It's hunched over like a Bigfoot, but looked smaller. Like it was had really long hair, but not as bulky. The thing that ties into the dimensional thing for me is that I had this thought before I ever even heard anyone talking about it. It looked at me in the truck and then it turned its head like a streak of lightning and went back into the woods from where it came. All the trunks on the trees, they didn't really have branches on the lower levels. And I'm looking at it, trying to look at it run through the woods, to make sure that I saw what I saw, but it just vanished. Yeah, it just disappeared. These trees weren't full grown. They were maybe 6 to 8 inches in trunk diameter, and everything was in perfect line. There's absolutely no way it could have hidden behind a tree. It just turns like a streak of lightning. I saw it running about 10 feet and then it just vanished. So I'm pulling over on the side, rubbing my eyes like I've been on this road too long. But then all these years later, I keep hearing everyone talking about the dimensional thing and that it's perfect with, never finding the body and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Did it go through a portal? Who knows? Now, Nate in Indianapolis, Indiana, called me to tell of something strange he saw while driving a truck one night. Imagine encountering a faceless man who is standing along the highway. Now, he tells me I'm a truck driver and I was headed east on I 80 up through to Illinois. I stayed the night, in Des Moines, Iowa to get some sleep. I got a fresh 8 hours sleep and I had just got back on the road. It was about dusk and the sun was just about to set. I was driving and I saw a figure just ahead of me on I 80 and it was right on the side of the road. When I say right on the side of the road, I don't mean in the grass. Its toes were right on the white line. I slowed down a little bit to see what was going on there and maybe avoid it. Now, when I got about 50 yards from it, I got down to about 50 mile an hour and I could see it clearly. I had my brights on and everything. It was a man. Well, it looked like a man of about 5'9" or 5'10". Couldn't have been more than 100 pounds soaking wet. And when I got up to him, he looked at me, and I kid you not, he had no eyes, no mouth, no nostrils. There was no orifice on his face. He was pale white, no hair, no features whatsoever. It looked like a skeleton with bleached white skin. He was kind of standing there facing me. I slowed down, and as soon as I saw his face, he looked up at me. Boy, I flipped the hammer down from Illinois all the way to Chicago. I never looked back. My blood ran cold. My hair stood up. It was one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen in my life. So, this next account, the witness tells me that my wife and I do not want to be public with our names and who we are. It seems since you already have my phone number, I would like to ask you to be discreet with the information you have already compiled, which I always do. I do not have good health, and I had a new heart valve put in last March. I'm a 100% disabled veteran since 2004. We are both 65 years of age. So he says on August 25th, 2017, at approximately 8:30 p.m., my wife and I were looking forward to getting to a location where we could just settle in for the night. We were riding in our 37-foot diesel pusher at a speed of about 60 miles an hour, slightly downhill, traveling southeast on Highway 550 and a few miles south of Nageezi, New Mexico. We had been talking about how the roads had changed from 2 lanes to 4 lanes since the last time we had driven there. Out of nowhere, I saw a light flash in front of me, and it had come from my left. I instinctively looked to my left, and I saw two creatures setting about 2 feet apart, a very bright craft which was at my eye level while sitting in our motorhome. Now, at that time, we were maybe 80 feet and gaining on their position. My first thought was, is this real? The closer we got, the more positive I was that what we were seeing was real, and I made eye contact. So some points I saw were: the craft did not appear to have a windshield. The panel in between the creatures gave off a very bright light, as did the floor and ceiling. It was as bright as an operating room under full lighting. There was a small stem that came up from the floor in front of the creatures. It stood about 40 inches off out of the floor. It seemed to support a small control panel that was thinner than a carton of cigarettes. The guy on the left, or on my left, had this gopher looking hand resting on it. The moment I saw them, the individuals were looking down the road as if looking for something to arrive. Now, where there was a truck coming up the hill toward us and about 1/8 of a mile away. The craft seemed to swing and rotate from the shoulder on the other side to a lane away was on my side and maybe 20 feet away. Once they rotated enough that their faces were 180 degrees to us, he saw us and disappeared. Now, as we drove down the hill, I looked in my mirrors and side camera, and I didn't see anything related to them after that. Now, a description of the description of the creatures that we witnessed. Now, both individuals had a skin tone of about the same as mine. I'm a white male. They had large heads and an upside down teardrop shape, very large black eyes, a small mouth, and two small holes for a nose. There were holes for the ears, but only a nub for ears. Very much like the drawing you see from Roswell, except not green, but green uniforms. The one on the right had a very smooth face. The one on the left appeared to be older with facial lines. The one on my left wrinkled the right side of his mouth when he saw me, but they were talking when we interrupted them. I made eye contact with the one on my left and looked directly into his large black eyes. His eyes had the finest surface I'd ever seen it. The eyes had no abrasions or scratches, no dust or mucus. I noticed that under the surface of these perfectly clear outer surface of the eyes was a grid of many individual eyes, like a fly's eye, but much smoother, superfine glass surface. Their bodies were skinny and were illuminated with a greenish glowing uniform. Also, there was roll type cuffs that also glowed but were beige. They reminded me of stick people. The arms and the torso were slender and about the diameter of a small child of 6 or 7 years. The hands reminded me of the shape of gophers, but these creatures are large in height and reach. The hand appeared to be like a lethal weapon. Their torso was long and skinny and appeared to be weak if depended on, but I believe the suit they wear is their body strength. The back wall is very hard to explain because I believe that the means in which they traveled was behind that wall. The wall was very brightly illuminated. It appeared to be divided into about 18-inch cubes, but wasn't. It was a flat surface. The light seemed to be boiling along with the edges of each panel in the colors of light greenish blue and violet. The back panel was incredibly beautiful and something I never forget. Now, we couldn't see the outer body of the craft because we were looking into the very bright light. As for hearing anything, I felt I heard them communicating when we approached. I wore hearing aids and they were stretching like a fax, they were screeching like a fax machine. I looked at Google Maps at the location of the incident and found something interesting. Now, I have no idea what the bright object by the road might be. This could be something natural, but they turned and went somewhere. I hope you have taken time to consider what I shared with you. I would like to know what's going on. Now, I hope to go back and spend a month or two or searching for them. Now, this location is important because it's approximately 25 miles north of Chaco culture, the Chaco Canyon area, Four Corners region. That's the National Historical Park, but there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there. It's the sacred ancestral homes of the Hopi and the Pueblo people, which was the Anasazi culture. There have been numerous documented UFO and unknown being encounters there. It's considered an area of great power by the native people. So, folks, you have any questions, put them up and let's see what we can answer for you. Barbara Mora, Lon, I really like that you contact the witnesses to confirm the story and find out more details. Well, that's something you almost have to do. I just don't take it for granted. It's something I read. I will normally contact the witness if they give me contact information. So that's just like with what's going on in Chicago. We have, Tobias and I have kind of made it a rule that we're not going to really consider, the sighting unless we do talk to them or, either by phone or in person. So, yeah, the interview is a big part of it to me. And Boyle, I've seen giant videos lately that are very credible. Well, if you have any, send them to me. I haven't seen too many I believe are credible, but who knows? Christina, do you think they want us to see them? Um, I think in some cases they do, but I think many cases that they don't. I've talked about this before with the Men in Black thing. I kind of think the Men in Black show up because they're kind of the alien cleanup crew for sightings where they didn't want to be seen. Um, I never thought the Men in Black were actual humans. I've always thought they were alien beings, and I think when there is a sighting and these Men in Black turn up suddenly, I think they're there to try to dissuade the witnesses from making any reports. Many times, just right after the sighting or before they've had a time to make a report or to contact anyone. So, do they want to interact with us? I don't know. I think most times they don't, but I think many times they will. Are they as Christina? Are they as curious about us as we are of them? I've talked to a lot of experiencers over the years, and I think for a lot of reasons they are curious about us. I think most of the aliens that people report are they're usually of a humanoid type being. I think they're evolved humans. I think humans are basically a universal species, quite frankly, and that these alien beings are evolved humans. Now, the reason why I think that they are interested in us or intrigued with us is because of some things they may have lost as a result of being involved. Um, I've talked a lot of experience about the David Eckhart mentioned this to me as well. That I think this is probably one of the reasons for abductions for them to be able to find a way to gain back something that they had before as humans. And I think a big part of that has to do with the ability to believe in an afterlife or to be psychic or other things that humans do possess that they may very well not have. So I think that plays into a lot of the abduction scenarios. Dagnammit. Many people have experienced humanoids and cryptids darting across the road while driving. Yeah, they have. I mean, I do get a lot of those reports. They're not always believable, but for I usually try to get back to them. But yeah, a lot of weird things turn up on the road. Jose Sanchez. UFOs are known to become transparent, so there may be something to that story of sitting beings. Yeah, yeah. It does turn up many times in these type of scenarios. Christina, do you think that part of the reason they don't make direct contact with us right now is due to the 75-year contract that was signed between the aliens and the government? You know, I don't know if that whole contract thing is a reality. I've reported about that, uh, where they're allowed to take a certain amount of people in abductions and such. Or I don't know how true that is. I think it was called the Granada Treaty or something to that effect. Um, it was said that President Eisenhower, had come up with that agreement, or his people had come to that agreement with the aliens back in the early 50s. So it would be close to 75 years. Um, Back at Holloman Air Force Base, be quite frank with you. So, Christina asked, do you think the direct contact will be normal when the contract expires? I don't know. I really don't know. Do I think it will? I'm not sure. If there is even if there is a contract, but I'm not really sure. Elevate Souls Production. Why is it contact seems to be so often at these high energy locations? Well, there it does seem to happen in certain areas for the most part. But I think that's prevalent with a lot of paranormal phenomena. There just seems to be certain areas where these things turn up, and maybe it's something they're attracted to. They feel safe there. Who knows? Jose Sanchez, do you think that Men in Black might actually not be human entirely or at all? No, they're not human. I don't think they're human at all. The descriptions I've received just don't seem to be human, other than they have humanoid, you know, tendencies or human tendencies. But if you read or listen to many of the accounts, there's always something very weird about them. They have a type of demeanor about them, a look to them that just is not human. The fact that they dress in these weird clothes, outdated clothes, that they have a fascination with a lot of little things like small electronics and stuff. Many times they're affected by microwave ovens. They ask people to unplug them. They don't like getting close to normal commercial computers. There's a lot of different things that just doesn't seem to make to associate with human beings. So I don't think they're human. Uh, Grandizer 12, Mr. Strickler, your thoughts on man lives in sunlit world of what he believes to be reality, but there is unseen by most an underworld, a place that just as real but not as brightly lit, a dark side. Well, you may be talking about even just different dimensions or realities. I think there are different dimensions. I think a lot of these cryptid beings, maybe aliens in themselves, come from other realities or come from other dimensions. Of course, maybe there's other universes they're able to travel through somehow. I've always thought that UFOs or spacecraft don't necessarily fit the bill for being interstellar travelers. I think what people see and what are coming are these craft are coming through some type of portal or some type of wormhole. I don't think they really, for the most part, travel billions and billions and millions of miles to get here or travel through space on an interstellar level just to check up on us. And I think they have other means of doing that. And I think they have quicker means of doing that. Dagnammit, do you think your first story about the cop in plaid pants was an MIB? It could be, but who knows? It could be. Even though they didn't really mention much, it could have been an MIB, but it's possible, I guess. Anything else, folks? Patty Troy, are considered high energy areas? Well, I mean, what we see are areas where a lot of phenomena happen, and there are some. I mean, for maybe various reasons, just like here where I live at. I live right near Gettysburg, and I've been to Gettysburg so many times. I don't even know how many times I've been there. I grew up there, and I think there's something about the geography and the fact that something terrible happened there back in the mid 19th century during the Civil War, and there's a lot of imprint on that geology. It has a very high bedrock of granite like stone that seems to be very conducive to paranormal activity. People see a lot of different things, just not ghosts. A lot of UFO activity, cryptid activity, and other things that happen out there. And there are a lot of areas around the world that do seem to have a lot of high energy, pick up a lot of you know, hard to see or hard to feel energy on, technology wise, but, people that are sensitive can feel it. And more times than not, they seem to be the areas where a lot of this activity occurs. Jan Chaston, will you tell the long neck story again? My daughter and I love and are very scared by that story. We thought you were going to retell it tonight. The long neck story. Are you talking about the one at the Land of the Lakes? If you are, let me know. I'll bring it up again. But the land between the lakes. I think where the guy saw the guy in the car. That might be what you're talking about. Anything else? Mary Mother Trucker. What are your thoughts on Area 51? I have always heard lots of stories about it. Well, it's secret for a reason. There's a lot of speculation of, of course, the skunk works there, and that they do test Air Force craft and such there, and the fact that there have been stories about alien craft being stored there or nearby there, and of course with alien beings. You know, I, y- it's all speculation at this point. Quite frankly, I don't know what has really going on there. They make for good stories, but who knows? Jose Sanchez. Mathematically, it would not be possible for them to reach us from such a huge light year distance since they've been in space to arrive sooner. Well, I haven't talked to one about that, so I'll just take your word for it, but I don't know if that's true or not. I think they know a lot more than we really do know or what we think we know. So we'll see. Maybe one day we will know. Anything else? Okay, folks. Well, again, thanks for each and all you coming and watching and chatting. If you donated, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. If you have a sighting or encounter that you'd like to report for the show or for the Phantoms Monsters blog, feel free to forward to my email, Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. So until we meet again next week, stay healthy and safe and have a good weekend and good night. Take care.